It has been a bad week for the Trump legal team that actually right now is holding a press conference that is so bananas we can't even bring it to you because it's just so full of BS. So it's been a bad week for them, and the week isn't over yet. President Trump added new lawyers to the mix here in the last few days in a last-ditch attempt to boost his flailing legal efforts. Last Friday, Team Trump and his allies lost or surrendered legal battles in rapid, brutal succession, at least 9 in key states just on Friday alone. There were 6 more lawsuits since Monday, including one today, all of these trying to block election results. They're losing because judges want, who would have thunk, proof of the widespread voter fraud that they're alleging, and there isn't any. Baseless lawsuits are a classic move of a Donald Trump on the ropes. Historically, he has tried to bury his problems in a pile of litigious paperwork, like when he failed to pay the contractors who did work on his real estate endeavors, forcing them to take pennies on the dollar for their hard work, or bleed more money as he tried to tie them up in court. In business, Trump did it to screw small businesses out of the money that he owed them. Well, now he's doing it to screw the country out of the election outcome that it chose. But in this case, reality is getting in the way. The margins in the states where the president's lawyers are contesting cases means the Trump legal team mission is a mission impossible. And that's even before you consider the collective lawyering abilities of this crack team that Trump has assembled: Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, Joseph DeGenova, Victoria Tonsing, and Sidney Powell. Before holding a news conference staged accidentally in front of a landscaping company next to a sex shop, before starring in Borat 2, before soliciting Ukrainian dirt and peddling Russian disinformation about Joe and Hunter Biden, before the FBI began investigating him, Rudy Giuliani was once a reputable, if at times controversial, Republican. He was America's mayor, a steady hand during New York City through the aftermath of 9/11, which earned him the title of Times Person of the Year in 2001. Before that, he was a fearsome prosecutor. To his credit, Giuliani conceived of a downright brilliant legal strategy to try the mafia's board of directors together all at once under the RICO Act. And it worked exactly 34 years ago, November 1986. But that was 1986. When Crocodile Dundee was the top box office hit. And now Giuliani looks and sounds about as lost in the courtroom as Mick Dundee did in New York. Remember, the Trump campaign wants you to believe this legal effort is about fraud on a massive scale. What Giuliani baselessly claims is 1.5 million voters who shouldn't have been allowed to vote. But he can't even seem to keep his lies straight. On Tuesday, Giuliani represented the Trump campaign in a courtroom in Pennsylvania in a lawsuit that does not actually allege fraud. And Giuliani ranted about how Joe Biden's election win was the result of a huge conspiracy. So the federal judge asked him if he was alleging fraud. Quote, "No, Your Honor, we are not," Giuliani said. But then he ranted on about a, quote, fraudulent process, to which the judge responded, "So you are alleging a fraud." He confused the judge and really anyone who was paying attention to the court, also name-dropping Mickey Mouse and JFK while forgetting boilerplate legal terms. Rick Hasson, a CNN election law analyst, reviewed the performance. He called it, quote, the worst lawyering in an election law case that he's seen in his life. Even former Trump Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney raised questions about Rudy's role.
I'm still a little concerned about the use of Rudy Giuliani. It strikes me that this is the most important lawsuit in the history of the country, and they're not using the most well-noted election lawyers. There are folks who do this all of the time. This is a specialty.
Jenna Ellis is one of the other lawyers on board the Trump legal train. She's a frequent guest on Fox, a senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, and a purveyor of the president's disputed election claims.
So President Trump is fighting for election integrity, and we want to make sure that every legal vote counts, not just for this election, but for everyone after this.
Fighting for election integrity, she says. Suspect, considering that President Trump made clear this week he's actually an opponent of election integrity. He made that clear by firing his top election security official, Chris Krebs, a guy that he appointed, for saying the election was the most secure election in history. Another authority who counters Jenna Ellis's claims about Trump's virtuous pursuits, Jenna Ellis. According to a CNN K-File review of statements she made in 2016 on her official Facebook page and in local radio appearances in Colorado, Ellis repeatedly slammed then-candidate Trump as an idiot who was boorish and arrogant, and a bully whose words could not be trusted as factually accurate. She called comments that he made about women disgusting and suggested that he was not a real Christian. Her conversion from casting Trump as devoid of honorable qualities to insisting he is championing moral standards will give you whiplash.
Why should we rest our highest office in America on a man who fundamentally goes back and forth and really cannot be trusted to be consistent or accurate in anything that he says?
Now, Ellis also said this, quote, "I could spend a full-time job just responding to the ridiculously illogical, inconsistent, and blatantly stupid arguments supporting Trump." Well, it's now Jenna Ellis's full-time job to push those arguments. Joseph DeGenova and Victoria Townsend, a veteran Washington husband and wife legal duo, they are big TV attorneys who were floated as Trump legal team members in 2018. But sources told CNN there was concern about major conflicts of interest, and members of Trump's legal team at the time opposed their hiring. So they now show up on Fox News and other right-wing media outlets to spread Russian disinformation and conspiracy theories.
There was a brazen plot to illegally exonerate Hillary Clinton, and if she didn't win the election, to then frame Donald Trump with a falsely created crime. Everything that we have seen from these texts and from all the facts developing shows that the FBI and senior DOJ officials conspired to violate the law and to deny Donald Trump his civil rights.
Victoria Nuland and George Soros, her buddy, would go in and tell the Ukrainians who should be their prime minister, who they should indict, who they should investigate.
And finally, there's Sidney Powell, a former federal prosecutor turned QAnon-friendly conspiracy theorist. These days, she dedicates her time to appearances on Fox Biz, spouting lies about voting machines.
We have so much evidence, I feel like it's coming in through a fire hose.
How will you prove this, Sidney?
Well, I've got lots of ways to prove it, Maria, but I'm not going to tell on national TV what all we have. I just can't do that.
She just can't do that, she says, but it's actually because she just doesn't have the goods. The voting software and voting machine conspiracy theories are well debunked. A group of national, state, and private election officials came out Thursday and they said there is no evidence of any voting system being compromised in the 2020 election. But Powell continued on with media appearances this week, including an interview with super right-wing Newsmax, where she said this.
The math just doesn't add up for anything.
The math adds up, Sidney, but it adds up for Joe Biden. It adds up to 306 electoral votes and an advantage of almost 6 million in the popular vote. But perhaps subtraction is a better way to think about this moment that we're in. Subtract effective governance in the face of a crisis. Subtract 250,000 American lives. Subtract the dignity of a commander-in-chief acknowledging what that loss means for this country. And that is the math problem that Trump has never understood. That his fate was tied to the fate of Americans, not just his supporters, all Americans, and their decision. The outcome of this election is clear, and no amount of dust that Trump and his allies kick up is going to change that.